The Boy Who Was a Cyborg, or The Curious Tale of Henry Blake. This is a story about a boy unlike any other boy that ever was before. For you see, in the not so distant future, the world that you might know right now is different. Very different. With advancements in technology came advancements in medicine. Many lives were saved, but many lives were also changed. Some people were happier with these changes, but some were not. And that was the case when it came to poor old Henry Blake, who, through no fault of his own, was thrust into this world far different from anyone who had ever been thrust into it. Because, as it just so happened to be, Henry was the very first boy to become a cyborg. But how did such a strange thing come to fruition? Well, that, my friends, is a story where we must go back in time to a place from the future, back to a cold, stormy, baleful night where two lives met another, and from the clutches of their hurried, brief existences, a child unlike any other emerged from the chasms of their combined void. As the clock struck midnight, they pounced on the door. He grabbed their emergency bag, filled with all the materials they had been planning for the weeks prior, and rushed down the staircase as quickly as they could manage. Going downstairs at a frantic pace was one thing, but trying to nestle in your pregnant wife, who had just moments before broken water all over the bedroom floor, and who was now huffing and puffing in agony, was an entirely different thing. He stumbled as he gently leant out his hand to help her down each step slowly. All the while, she held onto the handles. It was pouring outside. The rain thundering in, and he could barely hear her call out to watch out for the random shoe that had been left alone and had been turned into a trap, waiting for a foot to arrive in it on the step. As he moved down the steps, his foot collided with the shoe, and he nearly lost his entire footing as he let go of her and held on to the handles himself. He yelled out and swore before regaining his bearings and continuing once more. Moments later, they were out the door, rushing again to reach their car, which lay completely exposed to the elements, doing its best to shield its contents from the bullets of water that targeted it. He struggled to pry open his set of keys to open the doors, but the rain didn't care as it belted down upon them, soaking them wet from head to toe as they finally managed to get inside its protection. The engine sparked into life and he turned on the heaters while looking at his wife's condition. Her face gave him no relief as it poured out a redness like the hottest fever he had ever seen, and he wasn't sure if it was the rain or her sweat that had drenched her face entirely. The hospital wasn't that far away, not in this age and not in this city of over 20 million. Aurora City had come a long way since its early origins, and now in 2080 it was a booming metropolis, second only to Sydney. This was a time when a new industrial revolution had made leaps in advancement in both technology and in how everyone was connected. No one town was ever too far from another, and no one man was ever too distant from receiving help. Death rates went down and birth rates went up, but still there lingered this strange feeling that all of it was teetering on the brink of something catastrophic, even though no one would say anything of it, let alone could fathom what that might be. He placed the coordinates for the hospital into the car's automatic piloting system, and it immediately took off. He held onto his wife's hand as they watched the world outside, a darkness framed by a forest of trees that gave away no secrets. Flashes of lightning spurred somewhere in the distance just above the canopies, but it was the booming thunder that gave them more cause for fear. He pondered if this was how the birth of Poseidon's son had occurred in the texts he had read as a boy. 7 minutes to destination, cried the car. It wasn't a busy road, not at this time of night, with only a handful of piercing lights opposing them on the other side. But as they made a turn onto a narrow bridge, something ahead caught his eye. It was a carcass of an animal, possibly a deer. Whatever it was, it could not be registered clearly by either him or by the car's internal piloting system. All it could do now was slow down as they approached the lifeless body. Would you like me to proceed? The car asked, and he replied in the affirmative, allowing the vehicle to initiate a slow overtaking maneuver. That was when the bear that had been hiding and devouring the animal suddenly appeared, lashing out towards them. But this bear was not the size of any regular bear. It had been bred in zoological laboratories and pharmaceutical companies that had genetically modified the genes of black bears for the purpose of curing cancer, while inadvertently creating a supergiant of 2 tons of hideous muscle, some of which had escaped and had been hunted on ever since. With one foul upward slash, it lifted the vehicle onto its hind legs and tore it onto its backside. The bear's size was so immense that it obscured the car's sensors and blocked the view of the road completely. From the color of its fur in the raging rain, it was nearly impossible to spot the two of them on that bridge amidst the chaos of darkness and light. That was when the oncoming truck collided with both the bear and their vehicle. It was a force like no other, ravaging the bloody organic elements of one species against the frozen inorganic constituents of another. The sound of the collision was barely audible against the thunder, though it almost seemed to match it with a striking and disturbing resonance. The bear was dead, and so were the wife and the husband inside the car. There had been no other driver, as it was an unmanned truck sent to deliver supplies supplies to a nearby supermarket. But it wasn't the end of all life. No, for you see, inside the woman was a baby boy, one who would not have survived until emergency responses arrived had they not plucked him up as quickly as one might lift a flower from a garden. They rushed him to the same hospital and to a doctor who wasn't just a man of medicine, but was also a machinist and a mechatronics engineer. It was that doctor who decided to test the theory he had dreamt about since he was a young graduate and put into practice on this precarious tiny infant. That was the moment when a boy became something more than just a boy, when he became part boy and part machine. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.